The country is in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. Kevin Roberts, author of Project 2025.
What's interesting about our country, if you study history, is that there are some isms that occasionally pop up. One is isolationism, and its evil twin protectionism, and its evil triplet nativism. So if you study the 20s, for example, there was an American First policy that said, who cares what happens in Europe? Well, what happened in Europe mattered eventually because of World War II. There was Smoot-Hawley, which was a part of an economic policy, which basically said we don't want trade. In other words, let's throw up barriers. And there was an immigration policy that I think during this period argued we had too many Jews and too many Italians, therefore we should have no immigrants. And my point to you is we've been through this kind of period of isolationism, protectionism, nativism. I'm a little concerned that we may be going through the same period.
The final minutes of the Biden administration were spent pardoning Americans who committed no crimes. This preemptive final act is an alarming red flag, an outgoing president admitting that he has lost all faith in the system. It could almost be called primal in nature. His last act was a desperate attempt to protect his own family against the administration who called them the Biden crime family. While I can't blame him, it certainly foreshadows that justice will likely not be done against any crimes Trump commits as president in the next 4+ years. Welcome back to the underground. Donald Trump is now officially president. He has signed a flurry of executive orders and there is a lot of ground to cover. But today I thought I'd just take a step back and see where the chips have fallen since our pilot episode shortly after the presidential election. Since then, a right-wing takeover of left-leaning echo chambers has left the internet in shambles. I kind of think this all started before the election, actually. I remember several tech leaders, including the heads of Apple, Google, and Meta, all had private phone calls with Trump right before the election in order to curry favor early. I think they knew what was about to happen.
And then he journeyed to Pennsylvania, where he spent like a month and a half campaigning for me in Pennsylvania. And he's a popular guy, and he was very effective. And he knows those computers better than anybody, all those computers, those vote-counting computers. And we ended up winning Pennsylvania like in a landslide, so it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So thank you to Elon.
Zuck the Cuck has fully jammed his face gut deep into Trump's ass, so the takeover of Facebook and Instagram came naturally. Facebook was already a cesspool of your boomer extended family spewing vile right-wing filth anyway. The takeover of Twitter, though, was much more heartbreaking, I think. I was never really a Twitter user. I used to use it back when it first came out, and it was like this niche thing where you could just go on and literally talk to NBA players. But Twitter was becoming something of a community gathering place. I have this really unpopular opinion that I think the US government should own Twitter. Instead, the owner of Twitter decided that he should own the US government. So how about that? And then you have my beloved TikTok. The one place where I felt like I could find others, recruit for our little underground. The TikTok algorithm was so powerful that I kinda knew something like this was coming. See, our politicians are correct. TikTok is indeed a national security threat because the TikTok algorithm is so powerful that you don't even need hashtags to find people who think like you, who talk like you, who feel like you. The politicians or the upper class don't want the people united or informed. ByteDance did indeed build an app designed to destroy the United States because TikTok started bringing together all of the people who were fed up by the only issues that unite Democrats and Republicans, our hatred of the rich, the upper class. The overwhelming support for Luigi Mangione struck fear into the hearts of the oligarchy. Working class Democrats and Republicans for the first time in who knows how long united together to celebrate the assassination of a healthcare insurance CEO, myself among them. Can't have that, can we? No, they'd much prefer we fight each other while they line their pockets. So the TikTok ban, which Trump initially started and fought for, went through after the Supreme Court upheld the ban. And wouldn't you know it, a few days later, mind you, Trump hadn't even been inaugurated yet, TikTok is magically back online, and a message supporting President Trump was pushed out to over 170 million TikTok users. That's like half the country, by the way. The final infinity stone of social media captured. And now reports are coming in that the algorithms have been altered drastically to favor right-wing content and suppress anything viewed as leftist across every social media app. It seems the one remaining safe space is Blue Sky, the Twitter resurrection project. I did make one of those, by the way, undergroundhq6.bluesky. I might not post often, but I do read a lot, so. As I predicted in the pilot, Donald Trump immediately pardoned everyone who was charged in connection to the January 6th insurrection, and in an effort to keep myself and hopefully my audience in check, so to speak, I do feel it necessary to highlight someone. One of the women, Paula Hemphill, a 71-year-old grandmother, came out and said, quote, "We were wrong that day. We broke the law. There should be no pardons." And I honestly think that for that self-realization alone, she should probably be pardoned. This woman could still very well be a Trump supporter right now. And she would kind of still have a little bit of my respect in spite of our differing political views. You know, I can't be mad at that. During these uncertain times of oligopolies and enemies from within, I think it's really important to remember that in the darkest of spaces, a glimmer of light is all you really need. Here's a weird one for you that Trump also did. He gave back pay and reinstated service members who were let go for refusing the COVID vaccine mandate. And personally, I'm not really sure how I feel about this, because on the one hand, I am a pretty big fan of any move that puts money directly into our veterans' pockets, but on the other hand, it kind of does set quite the precedent for future pandemics. It now presents public health crises as battlegrounds for individual rights as opposed to public health. It has also eviscerated public trust on federal authority during emergencies, so it'll be every man for himself on the next one. Trump also labeled cartels as terrorist organizations, and I really think this is something both sides can agree on, especially those of us on the left who were introduced to liveleak.com during childhood. This key differentiating title essentially grants U.S. law enforcement a new toolkit. And for Democrats, the fear isn't in the toolkit specifically, but the person using the toolkit. See, labeling cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, or FTOs, gives enhanced legal authority for asset seizure. It imposes stricter punishments for anyone that supports cartels in any way, and crucially, it provides a legal foundation for possible military action by the US military. Remember Bush and his weapons of mass destruction that definitely existed? I want you to really think about what's being foreshadowed here. Our own Ukraine. Do you think I'm being overdramatic? Did you know that actually Mexico and Russia have a great relationship? They have for years, actually. Did you know currently Russia has 72 diplomats operating in Mexico compared to only 46 in the US and 38 in China? The Russians and Mexicans aren't necessarily allies, but if Mexico's big badass neighbor decides to invade its territory, who is going to help Mexico? Who in the world will Mexico be able to turn to for assistance? The other striking decision came in the AI sector, actually. Trump revoked Biden's executive orders on AI safety, effectively igniting the global race towards full singularity. The floodgates have opened, and tech giants will have very little government oversight as they race toward a future shaped by their hand. I sure hope these big corporations have our interests in mind as they work to automate most of our jobs. Trump also recently announced his plans to either reform or eliminate FEMA altogether, which is absolutely insane for so many reasons, and like I kind of just have to step back. It seems like everything this man does is crafted for the sole purpose of killing the people who voted for him. It is fucking insane to me. Just looking over the last decade, FEMA has responded to disasters for the most part in Republican states. Let me just fire off some quick examples. Hurricane Harvey in Texas, Hurricane Helene hit Florida and North Carolina, and I don't even think you need to tell me which way Tornado Alley leans politically. As a Democrat, I should be happy about this, because states like my two home states of Washington and California funnel my tax dollars directly into FEMA, who then take that money and help Republican states. By eliminating FEMA, Donald Trump will save taxpayers in blue states millions per year. Disaster relief will be handled at the state level, and in spite of recent historic wildfires in the Palisades area of Los Angeles, I can pretty much confidently tell you California can handle their disaster response perfectly fine, I think. I volunteered with the American Red Cross in LA for a couple years, and I can attest to this personally. California will be just fine without FEMA, but states like Louisiana, Arkansas, they're gonna get fucking mollywopped, and help is not gonna come. When a hurricane shreds your home apart and your insurance doesn't fully cover you, the next step is to be covered by FEMA. You're not gonna have that anymore, and then the billionaires will come over and buy your land for pennies on the dollar. I don't want that to happen. I don't want Americans in red states to suffer more during disasters, and that's why I'm against it. They're fucking around, and I don't want them to find out, but for some reason that makes me the liberal cuck bitch. What? And also, if I may wildly speculate on my dog shit podcast with like 6 listeners, part of me secretly believes that this is him laying more foundation in his ultimate goal to utilize the military within US borders. Hear me out. Think about it. A disaster strikes. Half of the infrastructure breaks down. Emergency services are overloaded. There are lootings. The power is out. There's very little running water. With FEMA gone, who could possibly maintain order? The US military. Oh, but Harbinger, you just said that FEMA responds in mostly red states. Why are you insinuating that this would be taken advantage of to ultimately kill Democrats? No. See, the point is that he's moving the goalposts. The US military is constitutionally forbidden from operating on US soil, and he intends to change that. So picture this. A disaster hits, I don't know, Mississippi, and it's chaos. In go the military. Left-wing media is going absolutely feral over this decision to put military boots on US soil. But wait, it's a huge success. The military is not a war machine, it is a logistics machine, and with its combined might, they rescue everyone and save all the towns. Yay! And the right wing get to celebrate in the left's faces. Woo! They used the military and it was a huge success. And then 6 months later, there are protests in a purple state, say Michigan. For what? Who knows? Pick a fucking reason these days. It's getting bad. Looting, vandalism, fires, and without hesitation, Trump sends in the military to restore order. Remember in 2020 when he proposed using the Insurrection Act to deploy the military during the George Floyd protests? The left will freak out again, but remember, this happened before, and it was a huge success, right? And against the Constitution, Pete Hegseth and his ender of woke military march into Democratic cities. And what happens next? I hope may only live in the bowels of my fucked up psyche, man. It's only been like a week and I'm already fucking exhausted. My hair is falling out, dude. Jesus Christ. What else did he do? Oh yeah, he pardoned all of the January 6 people. I've barely talked about this one so far. This is a frightening reality that we have entered. But let's put it into a different context. One of Biden's final acts was to preemptively pardon Anthony Fauci, the man originally tasked with defeating COVID-19. Disheartening as it is to report, due to right-wing backlash, he actually needs round-the-clock security detail, as he has had multiple threats on the lives of him and his family. Then Trump took office, and he realized that this was one enemy that he can no longer go after, and then decided instead to remove his security detail instead. And then he went on to admit that he'd feel no responsibility. Fauci was harmed. Just after pardoning thousands of his most loyal supporters. What kind of message does that send? I think it says, these are my enemies, keep your crimes federal and I will pardon you. But that's just me. Trump also wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and honestly this one's a bit peculiar to me. I don't really get it. Personally, I don't give a rat fuck what it's called, but if you follow Trump supporter logic, theoretically you could argue that since hurricanes get more dangerous in the Gulf of Mexico, hurricanes somehow must be Mexico's fault, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe calling it the Gulf of America is fitting, because every few years we just seem to summon a random shitstorm that fucks up half the country, don't we? He's also changing it back to Mount McKinley, and I honestly didn't even know they changed it the first time. Where the fuck was I? And where the fuck is Mount McKinley? Oh yeah, it's in Alaska, where Trump also removed Biden's environmental protections for the state and revoked leases for wildlife refuges and made a development of these lands a priority for national security, which probably also means a larger military footprint in northern Alaska in order to maintain further control of the Arctic Circle. But now we're just headed way off topic. He's also immediately ending remote work at the federal level, which, why? The federal government already struggles to hire talent, having to compete with private corporations offering 6 figures. Many people are just going to quit and go work for a company that will let them work remote, and many of them will make more money there than they would with the federal government. So government services will get shittier, but I think that's part of the overall conservative strategy anyway. What's that quote about drowning the baby in the bathwater? He also announced a federal hiring freeze effective immediately, by the way. At least until the Department of Government Efficiency gives the go-ahead, aka Elon Musk. Trump also pulled out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Agreement. That was no surprise. He also declared a national energy emergency. Drill, baby, drill. But then he immediately put a stop to all offshore wind farms. Like, what? He also declared a national emergency at the border, which, to be fair, he did say he was gonna do. Although, here's the fucky part, in case you needed a reminder, much of what he's doing boils down to further empowering law enforcement agencies already in place, like ICE and Border Control. These entities generally only operate within 100 miles of the international borders. but 66% of the US population lives within 100 miles of an international border, which unfortunately for me includes both Seattle and Los Angeles, and unfortunately for Canada, it includes 90% of Canadians. I don't know what to do with this information, but there you go. He also reversed a Biden administration executive order that placed a price cap on certain prescription medications for Medicare and Medicaid users, and this one is just comically evil. Like, the Joker could not have thought of this. Republicans hate Medicare and Medicaid, right? They want to see it gone and healthcare remain privatized. So why then say, no, we actually want people to pay more for medicine. We want to make it expensive again. It may come as no shock that pharmaceutical companies donated to the Trump campaign. This one is like, it's so evil, it's almost funny. People are definitely going to die because of this. There's a few funny ones, actually. They waived the requirement for all green card applicants to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Wouldn't you, as a conservative, want green cards to be harder to get? At this point, it seems like COVID-19 is definitely on Trump's list of enemies, since it's a big reason why he lost in 2020, and now he's trying to retroactively beat COVID the way COVID beat him. On the trashy social side of things, if you're into this stuff, Carrie Underwood was reportedly paid $0 to perform at Trump's inauguration, which begs the question, did she get gypped, or did she volunteer to do this? It seems she volunteered, saying that she was honored to do so. She might have saved a little trouble for the next girl. And then you have Deadmau5. See, apparently another DJ, excuse my pronunciation if it's not correct, DJ 3Lau, performed at Trump's inauguration. This is electronic music, people. I don't think very many conservatives have ever listened to this robot blender vomit before. I have no idea who this guy is, but I sure as hell know who Deadmau5 is. I am a big fan of Deadmau5. I used to see his blue Lambo speeding down the 405 while on my way to school in Los Angeles. Anyway, he replied in the comments section of 3Lau's post saying, and I quote, "Here's the best takeaway. Not a single person in that entire dumb fuck administration has ever known who the fuck you were, cared about you, or even gives the remotest shit about you, and you certainly won't be remembered by any of them. But everyone in this business will remember that you stood behind Nazis and convicted felons who would further marginalize the very people who gave you a platform. What little respect I had for you is gone. So glad you got some drink tickets out of the deal. Enjoy them, you Nepo piss baby." Which, can I just say, God damn, the absolute savagery. And then Joe Rogan spoke on his podcast calling the inauguration bizarre and reiterated the claim that he does not identify as Republican. If there are 10 people at a table and one of them is a Nazi, you have 10 Nazis. Elon Musk doubled down on his salute, saying, "I bet you did not see that coming." At least he's not hiding it anymore. I mean, he straight up told Germans to move past like the Nazi apologism. Like, this is pretty blatant at this point. The NFL, who has ties to both Meta and X, demanded that the New England Patriots take down their newly created Blue Sky account, effectively drawing a line in the sand politically in the social media scape. The NFL and MLB lean much more conservative than other leagues like the MLS, but it'll be interesting to see how corporations maneuver through this political divide. I mean, the Patriots owner Robert Kraft is fucking human sludge, so frankly I'm surprised they were even allowed to create the account in the first place, but I guess the NFL beat him to it this time. As Trump ended all diversity programs, you are beginning to see corporations exercise their own First Amendment rights because they're people, remember? My former employer Target has announced that they will be rolling it all back, while Costco shareholders have overwhelmingly decided to reject an anti-DEI proposal. Back to the military, Trump and Pete Hegseth's plan to whitewash the US military marches onward. As he had attempted to stop the Air Force from teaching recruits about the Tuskegee Airmen, in case you had any doubt left that this man was anything but a white supremacist, but I'm now hearing that they've walked it back, so who knows. And finally, to wrap it up, Trump dismissed 12 inspectors general. And this is actually a big deal, and I want to spend some time dissecting this for those who don't know. Inspector Generals were originally established by Congress in 1978 as a check on the executive branch in the wake of Nixon's Watergate scandal. See, Nixon infamously fired the prosecutor who was originally investigating Watergate during the election, so Inspector Generals, or IGs, were created as a direct response to prevent the president specifically from removing or otherwise obstructing investigators tasked with investigating executive misconduct. A law was created specifically to prevent the president from removing internal investigators. Nixon fired one, and it was coined the Saturday Night Massacre, and it caused this legislation to be born. Congress made it illegal for the president to remove investigators. Trump just removed 12. And I'd like that to sit with you for a moment, because yes, Donald Trump broke the law. It's pretty clear as day. This law says you can't do that, and then he did it anyway. Not only can he not legally do that, but he even fired an IG that he himself appointed. History's gonna look back on this moment as a tipping point for the United States, I think, because in one fell swoop, Donald Trump has called the entire country's bluff. He signed an executive order denying U.S. citizenship to children of parents in the country illegally, blatantly against the 14th Amendment, and now he's openly operating against the Inspector General Act? Donald Trump is now shoving and asking, what are you going to do about it? And the answer is nothing, because Congress is tasked with punishing executive misconduct, and it's now filled with his loyalists. Judicial branch? No shot, not with his Supreme Court. So what are we going to do about it? In his farewell address, former President Biden warned the country that it is in danger of being owned by a few very wealthy people, and said that an oligarchy is taking shape in America. Oh fucking shit, Sherlock, you don't say. This coming from a man who, in 2019, when he was campaigning, stood in a room full of millionaires and said no one's standard of living will change, and that they have nothing to worry about. Well, he was kind of wrong, because they all got richer. COVID made rich people richer. And then Biden went on to warn against the rise of a, quote, tech industrial complex that I think is already taking place and was touched on in the intro. Combining this with the unshackling of AI safety measures, we are on a fast track to a dystopian cyberpunk-owned world, which is fucking crazy. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am Mario the Harbinger. Stay frosty out there. See you next